In the 50s, people could not hear it. The atmosphere was, shh, it's over, let's forget about it, don't tell us about it.
So I went to Oliver Dye and see a bunch of people standing, you know, a little older than I am, and they said, we are trying to put together some people that will get together and build something to remember the Holocaust by, and to tell people what happened. I said, you got me. Nothing else was in my mind since I was liberated.
When they began to think about a museum and a memorial, nobody else was doing it. This was in the 60s. And those original founders were very pure in their thinking. They were visionaries.
We were the first Holocaust museum to open in the United States, and it was done by us, by survivors.
LA Museum of the Holocaust had been housed in the Federation Building, and in the earthquake of 1994, it, together with all the Federation offices and agencies, were displaced. And that began a nomadic period where the board realized it was necessary to develop a permanent home for their cherished institution. Jonah Goldrich had already built a monument here in Pan Pacific Park, and he, with the board, had a dream of building a permanent home next to the monument.
The actualization of this is in large measure, the majority, a result of Randy Schoenberg. Now, he did it with assistance. He did it with John Martz, who was the first person who came forward with a very significant pledge of $3 million. And thanks to John's initial gift, and then Randy's acumen and Randy's own generosity, this thing was built, and we see actualized a dream of generations of survivors and non-survivors.
It feels terrific to finally have a home for this wonderful collection. I always felt that having a collection and archive is really a very important thing to preserve history. It's one thing to see a movie, to see photographs, but when you're in the presence of the physical objects, the objects that were actually there at the time, that's when history really comes alive.
I must tell you that the road to getting here was not easy. Every week, I and the director at the time, Rachel Jagoda, met with community leaders and activists, and we were not well received. And the only thing that turned that around was Hagi Bellsberg's sensitive, contemplative, brilliant design that incorporated park space, if anything, added to the landscaping of the park, and then subtly brought in this museum in direct connection with the existing monument.
The museum is built around a series of 7, 8, 9 rooms that all present the historical facts about the Holocaust. We start with the world that was, the world of Judaism before the rise of Hitler, and then we move almost year by year from 1933 to Kristallnacht, the formation of the ghettos around the early 40s, and then the final deportation and extermination in the camps, ending finally at liberation.
The trick in designing the museum, and I took a large role in curating this new exhibit, was to be true to our original method, which was really the traditional book-on-a-wall type museum. We had pictures, artifacts, and lots of texts, and at the same time make it accessible to people in the 21st century. And so what we decided to do was blow up the pictures and have each picture with a title and an audio guide number, so that if you want more information, you can click on the number and get more information. We line our hallways with front pages from the Los Angeles Times or LA Herald Examiner to talk about how the Holocaust was being reported in Los Angeles.
Another way the museum makes an impact on its visitors is through the technology we've developed. You'll see a very large touchscreen table in the World That Was exhibit. This is, as the architect describes and envisioned it, a kind of Shabbat table or dinner table where people sit together in a community. And then as that community is broken apart, you come to the lowest point, a collection of 18 touchscreen monitors, each representing an individual camp, where people are atomized, they're split apart, and they're literally every man for himself trying to survive.
The fact that this museum is in Pan Pacific Park is another terrific feature. It makes the museum much more inviting. We have constant traffic in this area of people coming for all sorts of reasons to the park, and I think we're going to get a lot of sort of random visitors into our museum that we wouldn't otherwise get if we were on a street corner.
I think the architecture plays a very important role in very small ways and very large ways. In a couple of very large ways, it's very hard to find right angles in this museum. That's because the architects saw that the Holocaust was a time out of joint. It's a time that didn't square up, and so the building reflects that. He also plays with the availability of natural light, so we move from a very light and bright environment in the flourishing world of Judaism to the darkest point when people are actually being exterminated.
The museum is really dedicated to preserving the memories of the survivors. We have, for example, on each of these 18 screens behind me, we have survivor videos from the Shoah Foundation database and our own collection of videos of survivors talking about their experiences in each of these 18 camps. We have Thomas Blatt above his model of Sobibor talking about what he experienced in Sobibor and about the model that he created. So even when the survivors are no longer with us, they'll be present in this museum. They'll be teaching people about the Holocaust.
What I fundamentally want people to come away with when they walk out of our museum is an understanding of their personal power, the greatness of their individual voice to make a difference in their world. Evil does not flourish by itself. Evil flourishes when good people say and do nothing. And I want our museum to make sure that people don't say and do nothing anymore.
I want to say how proud we are to be here today, to partner here today, to tell the story to all of our children. The story of hate, but the story of love as well.
When the children come, I want them to be touched. It's not about teaching the details of the history. It's about touching them and their hearts and their emotions, and to touch the goodness in them.
This is what my dream was from day one, that should never be forgotten, should never happen anymore, and the whole world everywhere should know what the Nazis did to the 6 million, and this should never, never, never happen again.
The museum is so important to me because I don't have a grave to go to. Where to mourn for my people, for my father, for my mother, for my 2 little sisters, Zaidi, Bobas, everybody. But the museum is somewhere I can come in and feel you are remembered. You don't need a stone, you don't need nothing, you are remembered.